Hey, I'm Simon Kent. I'm one of the UK regional leaders and ambassadors for the Business Relationship Management Institute, and it's a real honour to undertake that role, be one of the UK leaders for the BRM Institute. And I became involved in the BRM coaching, consulting space probably from about 2015, and then really lifted off in 2016 through to current present day. And, and that came about as a result of my involvement leading up to that point was very much from a SaaS software perspective. I was involved in the SaaS software market, and I found great synergy between what it takes for customer success and what does business relationship management, strategic business relationship management look like. And I got to be honest, back in sort of 2013, 2014 sort of time frame, I'd heard of BRM, but I'd never really made the great connection. And I was very much operating in that customer success domain. And it was as I realized that in order for customer success to be what it is, success, and to prove value, I was working with a particular client, and this client said to me, I remember it so clearly, she said to me, wow, this thing that you're doing where you are aligning to our goals, you're aligning your software business to our goals and really showing value and how we can work together in partnership. She said, I need that internally. She said, that's exactly what I need internally. I'm in the IT space. She was in an IT service management domain. And she was kind of like, I need exactly that, because we have this disconnect where we speak IT and the rest of my organization speaks the language of that organization. And we somehow are constantly have this disconnect. This doesn't make sense. So she said, what you're doing with us, I need that internally here. And at that time, I'd heard of business relationship management, but honestly didn't really know what it was. And then as I then moved into, like I say, 2015, 2016, I started to look at that in a greater depth and came across the Business Relationship Management Institute. So, that's how I got involved in all of this. And it's a brilliant place to be. When I look at the strategic business relationship management, and also the certification that goes alongside that, whether that's business relationship management professional or certified business relationship manager, these elements and these certifications and I'm going to move away from the word role, because actually it's a capability. The capability is essential, absolutely essential. And it's essential on so many levels, because you have to work as an organizer. Let's say you're a provider, like a typical IT provider domain, right? And people have this notion, especially if they've sort of had a career that's through service management and project management, that it's all about service delivery and it stops at service. But actually, if you aspire to just be a service provider, what you're actually going to do is put yourself into a position that's actually under threat, because you then become compared to the rest of the marketplace. And that's really doing a dysfunction or a disservice, should I say, to your organization. What your organization wants you to be is a partner. They want you to help lead decision-making, be it around technology, be it around human resources, be it around finance, be it around legal, whatever that service provider function happens to be. They need joint leadership. They need co-collaboration and co-creation to help make the right strategic decisions that will deliver the appropriate outcomes and the appropriate business value. And that's really important. And that's why the strategic BRM capability, which encompasses a bunch of roles, that's why it's critical. It's so critical in today's world. when I'm engaging with BRMs and CIOs and speaking with IT leaders and business leaders, there's a question that often comes up about BRM adding value, and again there's this piece where they go, oh, the BRM role adds value, and then you then have to make that shift in the mind to go, actually it's a BRM capability that adds value. And then you go, well, what's the definition of value? And you go, yeah, there's this, people talk about business value, right? And they go, and you see so many articles and blogs and Lord knows what else, right? About business value, business value, business value. And then you kind of like ask the question, what do you mean by business value? What does business value? Nail it down. What does business value mean? And this is where the BRM capability comes in, because do you know what? They are the ones that extract what does business value actually mean in this organization at this time, in this context, because actually it flexes. It's constantly doing this, right? It's moving and shifting, and there are long-term strategic goals that are set inside of organizations, you know, the 5 to 10 year plans, that maybe even beyond. But I think today, given the rate of change and the transformative rate of change that organizations and the world is going through, it's almost difficult to define what that longer term vision will be, you know, beyond 10 years. You know, that said, of course, governments set out strategic plans that are 50-year plans. So, you know, they are there. So it depends on the context, but it's about defining what does value mean for this organization. And that's the critical thing. So this is where BRMs add value. They extract that, they understand what that looks like, they encapsulate that into then everyday work to ensure that the whole organization is working on the same page. And that's what a BRM will do. Influence and persuasion. What does that look like, and how important is that within the BRM skill set? And you know, it's massively important. It really is. It's just hugely, hugely important. Being from the commercial software background that I'm in, I understand and I practice what strategic relationship management looks like in the context of creating value for customers. And in exchange for that value, we generate revenue. Okay, so it's a pretty basic model that's existed since the beginning of time, basically, that says if I can persuade and influence a prospect or a customer to part with money in exchange for value, then win-win, right? That's the whole point of how business and commerce works. Now take those same principles, that same principle of influence and persuasion in the context of having really strong relationships, and you realize, so it's not, you know, some people sometimes kind of run screaming when I suggest that a BRM is like being a salesperson, and they go, "No, we're not salespeople. We're not salespeople." And I go, "No, you're not actually selling, as in you are not generating revenue. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the mindset of establishing strong, bonded relationships." That, because people buy from people, right? And that's what you're doing in terms of a BRM. You're buying, you're selling yourself, you're selling the concept, you're selling an idea, you're co-creating. That's what I'm talking about. And that in turn means you have to have great influence and great persuasion. My involvement with the BRM Institute sort of came about in a sort of 2015, 2016 sort of time frame. And leading up to that, I had worked on a methodology myself of connecting customer goals and outcomes to the delivery of a SaaS subscription software service. And in 2015, myself and a number of colleagues, we sat down and literally kind of like got the whiteboards all over the office and just went scribble, 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 and just went crazy ideas for about 3 months. And I remember the process of coming in, drawing, taking pictures, wiping it off, doing it again the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day, and just kind of like blah, and just dumped everything out of the brain, going, we don't know what this looks like, but we know it needs solving, right? And we just went and just made a mess on a load of whiteboards. But out of that came this notion of being able to architect this design inside of a software platform. And we chose a pretty well-known IT service management software platform at the time as a sort of test bed, I guess, more than anything. And actually brought it to life. We, instead of just being a bunch of ideas on the whiteboards or just documented in a series of manuals or guidance or something like that, we said, no, actually, let's bring this thing to life and let's see if it flies, right? Let's just chuck it off the edge of a cliff and see if it actually will fly, or just plummets to the ground and crashes, and who knows. And it was through that the BRM Institute were really kind enough to say, you know what, this is amazing. There are people like me, and there are a few others that were out there saying, this profession and this capability, this guidance is fantastic. This body of knowledge is fantastic. This certification is fantastic. But actually, to really drive this thing forward, you have to have tooling. You have to have a platform that allows the capability and the BRMs or the business partners, whatever the role happens to be called, to really pull all their work together. Because unless you can have all that centralized in a core place, and you can start to automate that, and you can start to measure what you're delivering and have some consistency, then actually everybody works still in a fragmented way, and actually that doesn't really add any value whatsoever. You get pockets of value, but not consistent, systematic or systemic value. And so that was why I got the BRM Institute Trailblazer Award, which I'm chuffed to bits about. I'm very proud still to have that on my LinkedIn profile. My background for probably, my background is 30 years in IT, or around IT, not in IT, but around IT, then 20 years in the enterprise software space, led on to leadership role. I was vice president of global customer experience for a leading SaaS software company. And for anybody that knows anything about SaaS software, right, it's all about customer retention, renewals, upselling. That's what gives value to your organization. Okay, I mean, that's like 101, SaaS 101. Okay, but that's what it's about. You have to, in order to create value for your organization, you have to ensure that you have retention of customers, and you are increasing the lifetime value of your customers. That's what it's about. And in order to do that, you have to show value. So there is great synergy between, how I see it, there's great synergy between that customer success model, that commercial customer success model, and the BRM, strategic BRM capability. Because once again, it's about showing and proving value. Both are doing the same thing in essence. For different reasons, of course. SaaS software is about customer retention and increasing lifetime value from license revenue. Of course, that's not the case necessarily with the BRM, strategic BRM, but it's still about value, and it's still about achieving the outcomes and showing and delivering business value. So essentially, it's all about value. So there's great synergy between the two. Now, what I found, having come from that customer success background and still operating in that somewhat anyway on a day-to-day basis, I'm able to apply the knowledge and the learning from strategic BRM and the BRM Institute's body of knowledge. I'm able to apply that knowledge into customer success, and equally take customer success knowledge and apply it into strategic BRM. And boy, that is a great combination where those two meet together, and you can really just like make some quantum leaps. You can really make some exponential, you know, growth in those areas. So I see great synergy between those two. I get asked the question, you know, what are the top tips for a BRM who wants to move into a strategic role? And do you know what? Strategic BRM is not necessarily right for everybody. You know, it's everybody has their place and should be valued and comfortable in their place, because that's where they add the most value. And that's great. So you get some BRMs who are perhaps a little bit more tactical, and they like being that tactical role, and they should stay doing that tactical role. That's amazing. You should, and not everybody needs to strive to be this strategic role, but those that do want to strive and do want to kind of like go, you know, I've been called into something else, right? There's a more of a strategic view. I know that I can connect with my peers at a more strategic level. I've just got that calling in me to do that. Well, and I deliberately use the word calling because it's something in here, right? It's in your heart, it's in your gut, it's you just feel it. And this is really important quality that people or one needs when moving into a strategic BRM role. So emotional intelligence is massive, is huge. So that's very, very important. So study, you know, self-awareness, self-management, do as much self-development as you possibly can, because the more you understand about yourself, the more you understand about other people. And that's really, really important. Because again, if you're dealing with relationships, and we've got this word strategic on the front, so everybody goes, oh, I've got to get into real businessy strategic. Yes, there's that element comes into it, but actually the strongest bit through all of this is relationships, and it's from these amazing relationships and showing value, and that comes from, like I say, a great increase of awareness of self. Because you can, like I say before, the more you understand self, the more you understand other people. So emotional IQ, going back to the strategic bit, which is business IQ, you know, learn what your business does, is, what it values, what are its drivers, what makes it tick, what's the definition of value? Because the more you understand this, you'll be able to frame what value looks like. So business IQ, you got to understand and have great relationships with your provider domain. So lots of cups of coffee, green tea, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, right? Go have relationships, build relationships, add value, not just up the food chain, not just across to your peers, but everywhere. You've got to add value. You've got to form relationships. And there are three metaphors that are used by the BRM Institute, and they are surfaced in the BRMP, which is you're an orchestrator, you're a navigator, and you're a connector. And I won't go into all three now because we haven't got time, but these three metaphors are really, really important. But there's also other metaphors that start to kick in the strategic realm, which is you're a co-creator. That's massive. The more you study what co-creation really is, the more you realize that becomes a huge thing. So a bunch of tips. I hope that's kind of helped on the tips side of things. Somebody about to start a CBRM course, you know, a word of advice, I guess, or some thoughts around that. Really understand your purpose, okay? Really understand who you are as a person, and understand what that means in the context of the relationships and the value for your organization. And when all of that aligns, or to use the BRM Institute word, and I love this word myself as well, converge, right? So, you know, when everything just comes together, right, then that's an exciting time. And CBRM is going to provide the knowledge, the tooling to allow you to level up, right? Step up to that next level and really give you a wealth of tools in your Batman utility belt, right? To be able to go and be that strategic business relationship manager, business partner, whatever the term happens to be called in your organization. But it's about being able to provide that capability in your organization. So good luck.